Think of the most beautiful places in the world you'd like to see, and we're willing to bet some of them are in Africa. From the Egyptian pyramids to Tanzania's Zanzibar and Zimbabwe's Victoria Falls, from Namibia's Skeleton Coast to Ghana's Cape Coast, and from South Africa's Table Mountain to Kilimanjaro. Every year, tens of millions of international tourists flock to the African continent. Now, according to the World Travel and Tourism Council, Africa is the second fastest growing tourism region, behind only Asia Pacific. It also says Ethiopia is enjoying the biggest bump. It's not just the continent's fastest growing travel economy, but the world's. And tourism in the country is now worth $7.4 billion. But how accessible are Africa's top tourist destinations to Africans? And what can African countries do to ensure that tourists keep coming? Welcome to Our Voices. I'm Haiti Adams-Fitzpatrick.
And I'm Oriani Tangishaka. Hadiza Kiari and Ayan Bior are out, but VOA social media producer Tatenda Gumbo is here. Tatenda, good to have you back.
Welcome. Thank you, guys. I'm excited. I have on my tourism shirt, so I'm ready.
Are you ready to travel? Later in the show, we'll introduce you to a woman who's found an innovative way to bring more young tourists to Africa.
But first, Malawi has no shortage of tourist attractions, from Lake Malawi to its majestic national parks and game reserves. But the southern African nation is struggling to grow its tourism industry, and the government has now come up with a new plan to bring more visitors there. Well, Lamek Messina visited a tourism street carnival in Blantyre and brings us this report.
The day-long event was part of activities to raise awareness for World Tourism Day on September 27 and promote Malawi tourism. Tourism operators set up pavilions to showcase their products and services for tourists.
We can't tell a foreign tourist about Malawi if ourselves we don't know what Malawi has to offer as regards tourism. So we want to promote domestic tourism, and thereby it will also lead to an improvement in the foreign tourism as well.
But tourism is largely hampered by Malawi's poor air transport infrastructure, according to a World Economic Forum report on travel and tourism. It ranks Malawi among the worst in the world at 126 of 141 economies it surveyed on tourism competitiveness. But Malawi authorities say they are working on a new tourism strategic plan that seeks to address that.
It has pointed out on airports that need attention. Our big airport, Lilongwe or Kamuzu International Airport, needs attention. Luckily, government is expanding that airport.
The government also supports the animal welfare charity African Parks in its drive to restore animals like elephants, cheetahs and lions to various national parks in the country. And it has responded to calls from tourism operators to reduce the $75 visa fee it introduced 3 years ago on tourists from countries that require Malawians to pay visa fees. The tourism operators say the higher fee causes some of tourists to skip Malawi as a destination, affecting their business.
The visa fee will be reduced from 75 to 50, which is much in line with what our colleagues in Zambia or Zimbabwe and other Tanzania are charging, so that we can level the playing field.
Tourism operators are pleased.
It shows that the government is committed. People, all the stakeholders in the industry are committed, and they are happy that we'll be having now more tourists coming in.
Government authorities say these actions could boost Malawi's GDP by 7.7% this year. Lamek Messina for VOA News, Blantyre.
Yeah, so I think that, the story for Malawi is very similar to many stories on the continent, that the infrastructure, the transportation is an issue, but they need the funding from the tourism industry to be able to fix some of these issues,
Right. I mean, there's a really big tourism ecosystem that is on the continent. So you can see when countries have issues, political, social, whatever it might be, that affects it. So I think that's probably one of the challenges a lot of countries have when it comes to reviving or pushing their tourism sectors, that they have to factor all those issues in.
And the benefits in terms of job creation. And we're going to talk about all those benefits around tourism in Africa with our first guest, Doris Woerfel. She's the CEO of the Africa Tourism Board, or ATB. She joins us now via Skype from South Africa's capital, Pretoria. Now, the ATB works to unite countries to declare Africa as one tourist destination. Doris, welcome. Tell us, why should Africa be seen as one tourist destination? Why not as a diverse set of countries, each with its own unique attractions?
Well, there are 54 countries on the African continent, and these countries at the moment are promoting themselves. Each country has its own tourism board. Or we believe, as African Tourism Board, that Africa is not separated in countries. It is much more very diverse, presented in different regions. So you have, for instance, the East African savanna, you have the Nile Valley, you have the Limpopo Basin. So you don't talk about Africa on countries. It should be seen cross-border, into the different regions.
And I liked from the story we just watched, I'm thinking on a continental level, if Africans don't learn to appreciate what they have already and to their African neighbors in terms of tourism, how would they benefit from the tourism market that they have? I'm thinking, are countries doing things interesting to attract each other in terms of within the continent, in terms of tourism?
I believe a visitor to Africa also doesn't come to Africa to visit one country. He would like to visit different destinations, and he would like to travel from the north to the south, from the east to the west, and not be stopped by borders. So we see Africa has so much to offer at the moment. We only selling key destinations like East Africa for the migration. We are selling Cape Town. We are selling the Victoria Falls. And there are countries that are completely underrepresented, like many of the West African countries. Also, I think Malawi is a very good example. We have a new trend this year where Malawi is coming up with a new introduction of the Big Five in their game park. So there is much happening. When you travel to Africa, you don't stop in the Southern African region. You would like to travel then also to other destinations on the African continent.
So Doris, I want to know, you're talking about people coming to the continent and you guys are marketing regions, but how easy is it for people to travel within these regions if that's the proposed plan? Can I get from East Africa to West Africa easily if I'm a tourist?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point that you're raising. I mean, the African Union worked on they launched a new kind of a concept, a single African air transport market, where they now start making intra-African tourism much easier. It's very convenient, affordable to travel from the north to the south. We have very good connections from Egypt Air to Kenyan Airways to many other airlines from connecting northern and southern African countries. But there was always and still is a challenge from traveling from the east to the west. But as I said, with this new launched concept, the SAATM, the African Union tries to solve this issue.
Doris, are there any trends that excite you right now in the tourism sector on the continent? And are there any trends that worry or concern you?
Well, there are some very beautiful trends in the tourism market. For instance, that there is such an improvement in the mice sector on the continent. In 2018, there was a rise of about 16% on mice sector tourism. And the number of major events also confirms this. So we have, for instance, in this year already confirmed the Aviation Africa Summit, Africa CEO Forum, Transform Africa, many others. So that is a very, very nice trend that we like to see even more extending. But we also have our Ghana comes in this year, the African diaspora, with celebrating the Year of Return Ghana 2019 events. And I've seen their calendar. It is really exciting. Music, concerts, and so on, where they promote this beautiful idea. So we have also Kenya launched Magical Kenya, also many projects in their countries where they also introduced additional to Kenya Airways, they now have another route, for instance, between Nairobi and New York City. So these are very nice trends where we see that we are spreading out into our source markets in Africa. Where we also would like to see a trend is security and tourism promotion. For instance, we had so many incidences on the continent. We can see that some of the countries, they suffer because tourists are scared to travel to countries. And we are responding with that, with kind of security and safety issues that we have to face here and which we have to address.
Well, Doris, despite the security situations, the trend you spoke about earlier sound very exciting, and we in the diaspora are always watching this because for us it always is wonderful. When you touch down on African soil, there is no feeling in the world like it. So thank you so very much for speaking to us. That is Doris Woerfel. She's the CEO of the Africa Tourism Board, or ATB. We do thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So what do you think? How can Africa become more accessible to African tourists? Join the conversation on social media. You'll find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our handle is at VOA Our Voices, and you can use the hashtag VOA Our Voices. We're also on WhatsApp. That number is on your screen.
Our Voices, we're talking about the news and issues you're talking about.
Sharing stories of development and growth across Africa,
around the world, and in our lives.
Topics that inform, empower, and change the rules.
It's time for Our Voices.
With me, Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick.
And Hadiza Kiari.
And Ayan Bior.
And Orion Itangi Shaka.
Join us on Facebook at VOA Our Voices.
It's time for Our Voices.
Welcome back to Our Voices. Africa's tourism bonanza comes as its nations take major steps to improve air connectivity on the continent. Now, safe and reliable air transportation is a key infrastructure need for the region's growing economies. That means more African jets flying to more places. And today we take you inside one airline's plan to change the face of African air travel. It used to be that when you check the flight boards at major U.S. international airports, most of the flights going to and from Africa weren't on African Airlines. Well, that's changing. And we're here at Dulles International Airport in the U.S. capital to find out more about the shift in the business of air travel. Every day, 78 international flights depart and land at this airport. Only 2 will take you directly to Africa on an African airline. That's why the ticket counter at Ethiopian Airlines is bustling. Passengers check in for a 13-hour non-stop to Addis Ababa.
Destination today is Johannesburg, and chose Ethiopian Airlines because it was very reasonable, and also the service has been absolutely fantastic when we've flown it previously.
I've been using Ethiopian Airways to other destinations like to Nigeria, South Sudan, Rwanda. I've also used Ethiopian Airways on international flights. My family is based in Washington, D.C., so Addis Ababa has become another home.
Ethiopian is one of 7 African airlines cleared for direct flights to the United States. The East African carrier connects passengers in 4 major U.S. cities to 55 destinations in Africa. Doris Woerfel runs the airline's U.S. operations.
Aircraft, so 320 passengers, and we are finalizing for boarding. Let's go in and see.
On board a 777, he explains Ethiopian's expansion plans.
We have a Vision 2025 to be a leading aviation group in Africa and connect Africa to the rest of the world. We have invested a lot in our fleet. Currently, we are proud to operate young fleet in the whole world.
In the past 10 years, Ethiopian Airlines has quadrupled its passenger count to nearly 10 million. Right now, it is Africa's fastest growing and most profitable airline, outpacing South African Airways and regional rival Kenyan Airways, both of whom have been struggling financially. Still, South African rules the routes from Washington to West Africa. Kenyan Airways was recently cleared for direct flights between Nairobi and New York. That must make for a very tough, competitive landscape. What is Ethiopian Airlines doing differently to win that game?
Competition makes you work hard, smarter. So it's good to have competition. That way we can enhance our efficiency, we can enhance our productivity. So that is the only sure way to survive in this 21st century. So we welcome many airlines to fly into the US from Africa.
The airline business is changing inside Africa too. These flights are not just flying across the Atlantic, they're flying north, south, east, west, across Africa. In 2018, 23 African countries launched a single aviation market to improve connectivity on the continent, reduce airfares, and boost economic growth, clearing the way for African carriers to challenge global aviation giants for dominance at home and ending the days when the easiest or safest way to travel inside Africa was via Europe or the Middle East. This flight is about to take off. Ethiopian Airlines says the African sky is not the limit. They hope to show the world what the future of African aviation can look like.
Thank you for that story, Haiti. I personally travel ET, and they're just my favorite. You know, just remembering the recent crash, though, you know, analysts say they're going to bounce back, and it's my hope, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hit, and you know, a lot of eyes are going to be on it. But as we learned that this was it's becoming clear that this was a Boeing problem, and I do think the airline is going to suffer some of that, the damage, the PR damage. But I think this is essential for the continent, as we said, to have more African airlines in the air, and so I think from a point of regional continental pride, we are all hoping that this airline can. I know it means a lot to the country.
Absolutely, it's a hit, but we'll see them bounce back, I believe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We're joined by our guest, Cherae Robinson. She's the founder and CEO of Tastemakers Africa. Cherae has developed an app on her website that equips young tourists with the know-how to navigate Africa's most exciting and vibrant cities. Cherae, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the show.
So I had a chance to go on your website, give it a look. Tell us more about it. What exactly do you do? What does one person do when they go on that site?
So Tastemakers connects travelers to local creatives in African cities. So think of it as like Airbnb for the culture. Wow. So your artists, your DJs, your creatives, historians, they create and host tours on our platform that travelers can then book directly. So you want to explore nightlife with a DJ, you can do that. You want to learn to make jollof rice, you can do that. If you're in South Africa and want to learn Zulu rituals, you can do that with a Sangoma.
And what was the inspiration behind Tastemakers Africa?
So I actually traveled to Nairobi maybe 8 years ago, and I met a filmmaker called Wanuri and a fashion designer called Kimathi, and they were like the first people I met. And they were able to show me the Nairobi I had been searching for but couldn't find. I was working for the World Bank. I was traveling all over the continent. I was young. And I was looking to see things that reflected my interest, but everything I saw was safaris. And so I couldn't find other stuff. And so I wanted to create a platform where people could find interesting people making African cities amazing places to live. And I wanted visitors to be able to have that experience through their eyes.
So Cherae, we know you have a base in Ghana, and we know also that this is the year of the return. So are people coming to your site for specifically going back to the continent through your website?
Absolutely. I mean, in January alone, after we came back from December in Ghana and everyone in the world had their eyes on Ghana, we had the most web traffic we've ever had in the history of our company. And this year has been a standout year in terms of revenue. I mean, we did quadruple the revenue we did all of last year in the first quarter. So it was really insane, and Ghana is the #1 choice when people are coming to our site. Ghana as a destination is where everyone's looking at, and we even signed a memorandum of understanding with the Ghana Tourism Authority to work with them directly on, what are these people going to do when they get here? How do we make sure that young people, particularly in Ghana, reap the benefits of this surge in tourism interest in their country?
So kudos to Ghana, but what's another country?
South Africa. People definitely want to go to South Africa. Tanzania, and interestingly enough, not just Zanzibar. We're seeing more people want to go to Dar es Salaam, which is cool. So people are just interested in going. I mean, people are still Wakanda forever right now. So 2 years later, it's still going.
And of course, being South African, I completely understand how people think we're appealing. But we do tend to go on and on about safaris, or in my case, Table Mountain. But, what are people coming for? Where are they coming from? Who's coming to Africa?
So we're seeing 88% of our bookings come from Africans in the diaspora. And that means African Americans, Caribbean Americans, third, fourth generation Nigerians who haven't been home yet. So we're just seeing Black people in America all going. They're not going just for safari. They're going because they hear Afro beats on the radio station in New York City. They're going because they're going to college like I did at an HBCU, and they're wanting to know what it's like where their friends are from. They're going because on Instagram, their favorite Instagrammers and rappers and everybody else is posting, their photo in Kente in Ghana. So you're seeing a pop culture influence from the continent, specifically in art and music, that's helping Africa become more accessible in the minds of people, particularly millennials. And so they're coming to touch those things in real life, in addition to the sort of historic, heritage-based tourism.
I just want to ask, if you don't mind, if we flip this on the continent, how are young people, as you mentioned before, benefiting from a platform like this? How do I, if I'm on the continent, get in touch with you so I can help someone travel and come enjoy themselves?
Well, definitely refer to them to be a Tastemakers curator. A curator hosts experiences on our platform. Unemployment, particularly among young people, is huge on the continent. 400 million people under 35 are either unemployed or underemployed. So Tastemakers is giving those people an opportunity to do the things they love and meet new people by hosting experiences rooted in their passions. And so that's really the way we see how to make change effective and sustainable.
Quickly before we go, I'm curious to know where are your favorite places to go, because my favorite place is Zanzibar in Tanzania. What is your favorite place?
I'm feeling Ghana. I am totally feeling Ghana. I have always wanted to go to Ghana, so I was so excited when you started talking about this. You better find me a tastemaker.
Yes.
I'm coming to Ghana.
Make it happen. I would love to go to Namibia, so I will.
Namibia.
Yes, make that happen for me.
For me, it's Dakar.
Dakar,
Senegal.
Oh.
Senegal is my place.
That rice, huh?
That's the original jollof rice.
Don't start this war on TV.
Well, this is all so exciting, and thank you so very much for joining us here. Cherae Robinson, she is the founder and CEO of Tastemakers Africa. We do thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, still ahead here on Our Voices, the sky's the limit for the first Black woman in Africa to start an airline business. Our Women to Watch segment is next. We'll be back in a moment.
Welcome back to Our Voices. In case you didn't know, African women are globe-trotting across the continent and around the world. We highlight them in our Women to Watch segment.
Where in the world is Jessica Nabongo? The Ugandan American is on a quest to become the first black woman to visit every country in the world. Out of 195 countries, she's traveled to over 180 of them. She's the founder and CEO of Jet Black, a travel firm that promotes tourism to a number of countries in Africa, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. Jessica started traveling when she was 6, and if you check her Instagram feed, you'll see her buying fabric in a market in the Republic of Congo. Her photo essays about countries with lower rates of tourism provide her followers a nuanced perspective about places often mischaracterized by international news outlets and avoided by travelers. You can find out where Jessica is by following her blog or her Instagram at @thecatchmeifyoucan.
Caesar Msimela is the recently appointed CEO of South African Airlines' SA Express. She also has the distinction of being the first black woman in South Africa to start and own an airline, Fly Blue Crane, in 2015. Now, although the airline is no longer since September 2017, Msimela's list of accolades includes being the first black executive vice president of South African Airways, as well as the first woman to make it onto the International Air Transport Association, or IATA's board of governors, and she was listed as one of Forbes magazine's most powerful women in 2011. Msimela says she is not surprised that Africa ranks as having the largest number of women within the global aviation industry, saying it is still challenging for women and there is vast room for improvement. We need more women pilots and technicians and women in key organizational positions. These women, I say that every week.
We're trying.
How many countries have you been to?
Not enough.
Not enough, for real.
Absolutely.
After 180 of someone?
I know. Like 10, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there an African destination or globetrotter we need to know about? Use the hashtag VOA Our Voices and tell us who you think is a woman to watch. Be sure to watch Our Voices on the VOA website, where you can find the world's top news stories.
We leave you with a quote from the late American poet, singer, and civil rights activist Maya Angelou. She used her voice to say, "Perhaps travel cannot prevent bigotry, but by demonstrating that all people cry, laugh, eat, worry, and die, it can introduce the idea that if we try and understand each other, we may even become friends." You like that?
I do, and that is where we're going to leave it this week. We do have a special thank you to the founder and CEO of travel startup Tastemakers Africa, Cherae Robinson. Thank you so very much for being with us. Thank you for joining us as we travel to Africa today. From our entire team here in Washington, wherever you're going next, we wish you safe and happy travels. Until next time, let's go back.